as I was saying, it's a nice segue from what we were talking about, because I'd like to start by sort of, in my personal, my current role at Clyde, which is a global law firm, we've been trying to sort of encourage a more holistic approach to metrics and dashboards and things like that. And we're trying to ground that understanding in somewhat an old concept of the balanced scorecard. So balanced scorecard has been around for 30 plus years. It was coined by two Harvard professors, back in 92. And effectively what they encourage businesses, and they did a lot of research around it, said that decision making is a lot more powerful when you bring a cross-functional approach to the multifacets of that decision. And they've effectively broken down, originally they broke it down into four. Through my career, I've seen different businesses use 6 or 8, depending on what's appropriate to your own business. But currently we are looking at 4, what we would think are quite fundamental to a professional services business. The financial perspective, a customer perspective, internal business processes, and learning and growth. And what I've listed out here are a couple of the key metrics that we look at under each of those categories. So when you look at financials, obviously, revenue, contribution, margin, your own businesses will have a few other metrics that are core, but those are relatively easily understood, highly, sort of distributed across different leader groups and business groups within your own organizations, and always have been the historic benchmarks that you would always fall back on. But now when you start overlaying some of the other metrics, so for example customer perspectives, you would be looking at things like customer satisfaction or speed to delivery or SLA compliance with for certain clients or things like that, which may not always be traditional metrics that senior leadership always looked at. So that brings in a different perspective, and generally what we try to do is to understand what are lead and lag indicators. Some things like customer satisfaction is a lag indicator. So your customer satisfaction will drop after you've eroded your service level, for example, right? Or your customer satisfaction scores will go up once you've done the work to actually improve your service levels to your customers. So those are lag. But then you also have lead indicators, and lead ones to us are things like the numbers of projects you're working on, or the numbers of new clients you're sort of opening on a daily basis. And so those become preemptive indicators that would indicate whether your financial metrics are either going the right way or not, right? And that's why we're trying to bring those two together. And then, of course, as my panelists have already mentioned, people are quite important, particularly in a professional services organization. Our primary resource is the people that we manage, and we try to keep motivated. So we always look at internal metrics around the people, and trying to monitor their sort of more morale levels, which is harder to do, and particularly for financial people, sometimes not so comfortable to do as well, because they're not black or white. They are open to multiple interpretations. But we have started to sort of monitor things like turnover, progression, exits, how many people are leaving. We're trying to understand more about the key reasons why people leave, and particularly in law firms, professional services firm, people do tend to move around quite a lot. And that's, in some aspects, those are positive. It could be a positive, but there could be business negatives in having those things as well. Now, if you move on to the next slide, what I've tried to do is to present how we monitor these internally. And what you see at the bottom left is our traditional 4-quadrant numeric dashboard. And what we are beginning to link to that, and this is where technology is playing a large role, because it's enabling us to visualize numbers in a far more intuitive way. And to an earlier point that Frederick said, enables non-financial people to actually understand, what could be the impact. So what you see on the top right is a Power BI dashboard of office utilization. Now, that's not a financial metric, but it's purely looking at, how do people use offices? This became quite important post-COVID, where, lots of people didn't quite know what to expect, and would people always be coming to office? Would they prefer to be in office? Would they be more productive if they're in office as opposed to be working from home? So which is why we're trying to link these two together to sort of say, okay, is there a correlation between productivity and office visits in particular geographies and particular teams? Does that impact the people's morale in those organizations? Does it in those locations? And at the end of the day, does that improve or deteriorate the top line, which is revenue? And we've also brought in other metrics. So it all depends on what's important for your own business. And there could be things like rates, there could be things like utilization, there could be the numbers of new projects you all have on, or various other things that helps you create that story. And I think FP&A people are well placed to actually look at the bigger picture and to paint that story for non-financial people. And for my own organization, what I've tried to correlate at the top right, top left, is on the 6 perspectives of the maturity curve, where I think we are sort of falling. And we are trying to, I think we are all on a journey of understanding and improving. And what I've tried to present there is on different aspects. Personally, I think we are at different levels of that maturity curve. So if you look at approach, we do have a structured collaboration type model. So I would sort of place ourselves in a 3, but we are quite far from having a totally integrated approach where all functions would, work collaboratively together, use the same tools, understand all of the same metrics and its drivers. From a business acumen, certainly growing, depending on who you ask. Obviously some business partners are far better at business acumen because of their experience and their exposure, and others are not, but that's always a moving target. Degree of influence, I think we are getting to that 4s and 5s, because we are trying to link different things. Soft skills, analytics, we are sort of in the middle, probably getting towards more, getting more mature and more advanced. And technology, depending on who you ask, I have placed ourselves in a 2, because we are beginning to use more business analytic tools and dashboards and things like that. But it all depends on where your own organization has been coming from, right? So if you look at some industries, they are far more analytical than perhaps professional services are, and they would look at us and probably say we are a 1. But then if you look at small organizations that, are still very Excel based, very manual, then we are probably, in comparison to where they are, probably higher up on the scale. But I hope that sort of resonates with where I think FP&A people sort of can add value in this whole journey.